I need to preface this by saying I am a rational person. I work as a pediatric occupational therapist. I deal in measurable progress, in documented outcomes, in observable behavior. I am not someone who spirals. I am not someone who invents problems. I want you to hold on to that as you read this because at several points in this story, I question my own sanity. And knowing that I am a grounded, evidence-based person is the only thing that kept me moving forward instead of just closing the attic hatch and pretending I'd never opened it. My husband's name is Daniel. We met in 2012 at a mutual friend's birthday party in Nashville, Tennessee, where we both lived at the time. He was funny and attentive and had the kind of laugh that seemed to start somewhere deep in his chest. He was a software consultant, which I always understood in only the vaguest terms. He helped companies migrate data systems. He traveled sometimes. He worked from home when he wasn't traveling. It was a job that existed largely in abstraction, as far as I was concerned, and I was fine with that, because my job was concrete enough for both of us. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on a hiking trail in the Smoky Mountains, a ring in his jacket pocket, the whole cinematic thing. We got married in 2015. We bought a house in a suburb of Nashville in 2017. We got a dog, a yellow lab named Crouton, in 2018. We talked about children in the abstract, that comfortable marital someday. By most external measurements, we were a perfectly ordinary, reasonably happy couple. Daniel traveled for work roughly once a month. Sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on project cycles. He'd be gone 3 to 5 days at a time usually. He always texted regularly when he was away, called most evenings, brought back local snacks from whatever city he'd been in, a tin of caramel corn from Chicago, pralines from New Orleans, that kind of thing. It was a sweet habit, and I never thought about it critically. Why would I? In September of last year, Daniel left for a trip to Seattle, a client migration project, he said. Probably 4 days, maybe 5. He kissed me at the door, scratched Crouton behind the ears, and drove to the airport. I took a Saturday, the first full free Saturday I'd had in a while, and decided to do something I'd been putting off for the better part of 2 years: organize the attic. We had moved several boxes up there when we transitioned my home office to the second bedroom, and they'd just been sitting there in the way that boxes and attics tend to do. I had boxes of old books, holiday decorations, childhood keepsakes I wasn't ready to discard but didn't want to look at regularly. I assumed Daniel's boxes were similar, the miscellaneous sediment of a life in progress. I want to be precise about what happened next because I've replayed it so many times that I want to make sure I'm telling it accurately and not narratively. I opened the first 2 boxes, and they were exactly what I expected. Some old textbooks from Daniel's college years, a broken desk lamp, a box of cables and adapters for devices he no longer owned. Normal attic archaeology. The third box was heavier than I expected when I moved it. It was taped shut. Not casually folded like the others, but actually sealed with several layers of packing tape in a way that suggested deliberateness. That registered somewhere in the back of my mind, but not loudly. People tape boxes. It's not a crime. I opened it anyway because I was organizing and I needed to know what was in everything. At the top was a manila envelope, the thick clasp kind. Inside was a stack of documents. Not random documents, organized ones. Paper-clipped into sections, ordered in a way that indicated someone had arranged them with care. The first section was receipts: restaurant receipts, gas station receipts, grocery receipts, a dry cleaning receipt. They spanned several years: 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, the years before Daniel and I met or started dating. I wouldn't have found that remarkable except for one specific detail. Nearly all of them were from Ohio. Columbus, Ohio specifically, and sometimes Westerville, which I later learned as a suburb of Columbus. I set those aside and looked at the next section. It was a stack of mail. Not copies of mail, actual physical pieces of mail, opened, folded back into their envelopes. Utility bills, a lease renewal notice from an apartment complex called Riverside Court in Columbus, Ohio. A renewal notice for a car registration, a 2009 Honda Accord with an address in Westerville, Ohio. The name on all of it was Daniel's, his full legal name. His date of birth on the car registration matched perfectly. I sat there on the attic floor for what was probably 20 minutes, but felt like both 5 minutes and several hours simultaneously. Crouton came to the bottom of the attic stairs and whined once, which is his way of checking on me. I climbed down, gave him a distracted pat, and went to sit at the kitchen table. I want to pause here and tell you what I did not do, because I think my restraint in this moment says something either very good or very pathological about me, and I'm still not sure which. I did not call Daniel. I did not text him. I did not call my best friend or my sister. I did not immediately consult an attorney. I sat at my kitchen table and I thought carefully about what I actually knew and what I was inferring and what questions I needed answered before I did anything. What I knew. Daniel had a documented life in Ohio that he had never mentioned. He had shared an apartment with a woman during at least a portion of our relationship. The photographs suggested this relationship was romantic in nature, though photographs are not proof of anything in particular. What I did not know, the timeline. How long this had gone on, whether the Ohio situation had ended before we became serious, or at our engagement, or at our wedding, or never. Whether Kay knew about me, whether any of the business trips over 11 years of marriage had been, partially or entirely, something else. I went back to the attic. I am not proud of what I did next, but I am also not ashamed of it. I went through that box with the systematic thoroughness of someone who has been trained to document and assess. I photographed everything on my phone. The receipts, the mail, the photographs, the lease. I created a folder on my phone labeled with a string of random letters so Daniel wouldn't recognize it if he happened to see my screen. Then I reorganized the box exactly as I'd found it, retaped it as best I could with fresh tape I found in the junk drawer, and put it back exactly where it had been. Over the next 4 days, while Daniel was in Seattle, texting me about the weather and calling me in the evenings from what sounded like a hotel room with the television on low, I did research, the kind I could do from my laptop and my phone without leaving a trace he'd recognize. I looked up Riverside Court in Columbus. It was a real apartment complex, still operating, nice-looking enough in the photos. I looked up property records in Westerville. There was a vehicle registration history I couldn't fully access, but enough to confirm the address had been real. I looked up Kay's name. Here is where it got complicated in a way I hadn't anticipated. Kay had a LinkedIn profile. She was a project manager in Columbus. She had gone to Ohio State. She was around our age. Her profile photo showed a woman who matched the dark-haired woman in the photographs. Same wide smile, same face, a little older now, the way we all are. Her employment history showed she had worked at a company whose name I recognized because Daniel had mentioned it. Not prominently, not frequently, but he had mentioned it years ago in some context I could no longer fully reconstruct. A former client, I had thought at the time. I looked at her profile for a long time. She looked like a completely ordinary person. She looked like someone who would have no idea that I existed, or might know I existed in a way that meant something very specific about what kind of situation she had also been living inside. Or, and I had to hold on to this, she might be someone from Daniel's past who I had simply never heard about, the way people have entire lives before you meet them, and the lease and the photographs might represent a chapter that closed before our story began, merely undisclosed rather than ongoing. The receipts bothered me. They went up to 2014 in the sections I'd found. We started dating in August 2012. Daniel came home from Seattle on a Wednesday evening. He smelled like airport and brought me a small bag of coffee from a local roaster, a thing he always does. He was warm and normal and asked about my week and played with Crouton in the backyard while I made dinner. I watched him through the kitchen window. I watched him throw a tennis ball and crouch down to let the dog tackle him and laugh his chest-deep laugh. I have not yet confronted him. I want to be clear about that. I'm writing this 8 weeks after finding that box, and I have not said anything. The reason is not fear, though there is some of that. The reason is that I have spent 8 weeks very quietly filling in pieces of the picture, and I am not finished yet. I found a private investigator through a recommendation from a woman in a private online forum for people in situations adjacent to mine. He has been working for 3 weeks. He has not yet confirmed that any current travel is anything other than what Daniel says it is. He has confirmed that Daniel did in fact spend significant time in Columbus, Ohio, between 2011 and approximately 2015. He is still working on the timeline's edges. I have spoken to a family law attorney on a consultation basis. I have started a separate savings account. I have begun, slowly and systematically, to understand the financial architecture of our life together in a way I am embarrassed to admit I never fully did before. Here is the strangest part of all of this. On any given Tuesday, Daniel and I eat dinner together and talk about small things: his work, my clients, Croughton's vet appointment, a show we're watching. He holds my hand sometimes when we watch TV. He kisses me before bed. And I respond to all of this in a way that is mostly normal because I don't know yet what the truth is. And I have learned from both my professional life and this experience that acting before you have complete information can foreclose options you'll wish you'd kept open. But at night, after he's asleep, I lay there in the dark next to this person I have shared 11 years with, and I think about a box in the attic with thick packing tape, organized with deliberate care, hidden in a house he assumed I would never systematically excavate. People don't pack boxes that carefully unless they're keeping something. I know what I found. I know what it suggests. I am waiting, as carefully and as calmly as I can manage, for the rest of the picture to come into focus. And when it does, when I have everything I need, I will not confront him in a doorway while my hands are shaking. I will sit across a table from him with documents, and I will ask him to explain, in whatever order he chooses, the life he lived in Ohio. Until then, I am sleeping on my side of the bed and petting my dog and doing my job well, and waiting. I am very good at waiting when I know what I'm waiting for.